So, what we want to do next, that we've done a good review of evolution, is look at the interaction between evolution and ecology. And what we'll find is, despite the fact up to this point, we've largely had this perception of evolution as this sort of very slow process. We just got done talking about dinosaurs and whales, okay? And this is true, right? Evolution also works at that rate, but it also can work much quicker and interacts with ecological processes, which for our perspective is both much more interesting and much more applicable. And so we're going to call these Eco-evolutionary dynamics. So what we'll probably end up doing today is just introducing this idea. So one of the core pieces behind this is that phenotypes, so remember, phenotypes are the physical, the physical manifestation of the genotype, right, are complicated. And so you probably remember this either from genetics, if you take genetics, or all the way back in Bio 130, that we largely sell this as this is DNA, okay? But there are a lot of other things, okay, like the environment, that also affect the manifestation of the phenotype, even for a single individual over its lifespan. Okay, and so this is where the interplay between evolution and ecosystem end up sort of smacking faces with each other. And so that's what you see here. For example, on the right-hand side, this would be within a single organism's lifetime, whether or not there was a fish in their pond would be whether or not they grew up with this really handsome helmet or not. Okay, all other DNA being exactly the same. Okay, so what exactly does it mean when we're talking about this Eco-evo, right? Eco being ecology, evo being evolution. So we're combining those terms together. I didn't make that up, I promise. That's a thing. Okay, and then what we're going to end up doing is saying, then what exactly is a phenotype? And we're going to probably end up cutting this in half before we get to our test, I suspect. And then we'll end up, we have a really good journal club that'll summarize this as well. So there's going to be probably very little of this on the exam. There'll be a good amount of the regular evolution, but very little of this stuff. Okay. So as we look at Eco-evo, right, that ecology evolution. Okay, so here's where this comes from. So we have our genes, okay, and we sort of understand that is like the core. Okay, our steadfast, unchanging, dependable core of what makes a phenotype. Okay. And our genes do a good job of making phenotypes. And this is sort of how we're originally taught this. Thank you, Gregor Mendel, right? We had our peat plants. If you had, these alleles, you got this phenotype. Huzzah. Okay, even when we had more complicated patterns of inheritance, there was a pattern. You inherited that. You got that phenotype. Okay. And this was largely where we started. Okay, you had these genes, you got these phenotypes. Okay, these phenotypes gave you different abilities sometimes to breed. Okay, pass on those genes. It's the circle of life. Okay, play the Lion King music. Okay, fade out. But we know, of course, that it's a little bit more complicated than that. And we can start bringing in concepts of things like natural selection, the population level. Even if you want to think about things like Migration, immigration, okay, where we're losing genes and gaining genes. Okay, all of those effects, okay, selective breeding, sexual selection, okay, all of those things are going to affect what phenotypes are available, which then affect what genes are available, right? Or what phenotypes are selected for. Okay, I only choose the reddest males. Okay, if I'm only choosing the reddest males, then those are the genes that are going to be available or more frequent. Okay. And then we can expand that up to communities, right? If we think about I'm only choosing the reddest male at the population level, okay, we can think about, well, the reddest males get eaten. Okay. Or okay, looking at which organisms are more likely to survive migration from one area to the next. Bring that up to ecosystem level. Okay, if I'm a red male, okay, I may be okay in my community, but I might get picked off going from North America to South America. They sort of stick out. Okay. So as we start to think about all of the interconnectedness between these, as I move from North America to South America, okay, there's more predators in South America, right? It's warmer, more competition. I'm more likely to be eaten there. Okay, that's going to alter the gene frequency in my population, which alters the phenotype in my ladies. Okay, so this ends up shifting very quickly the relationship between, well, once upon a time it was just Mendel and his pea plants. Okay, so it's not just phenotypes affecting genes and genes affecting phenotypes. Okay, we can imagine very quickly, okay, my ecosystem, so if we just follow, okay, without getting too flustered, these arrows here, okay, the type of soil, okay, or the rain. Okay, if I am a plant, right, having a phenotype that makes me better or worse at being able to pick up rain. Okay, I've subvented all of these, but the ecosystem that I'm in matters. Right? Climate change within that is going to affect that. If we have the increasing temperatures creeping northward, okay, so the core of this Eco-evo business is, at its very least, just understanding that other levels, okay, community structure, ecosystem structure, okay, the fact that you might be on a mountain versus in a valley, okay, all of these things affect, the fact that you might travel between the mountain and the valley, are going to affect phenotypes and then the subsequent genotypes. Okay, and these are things we kind of knew, right? They just sit in our back of our head. Because when we're thinking genotypes and phenotypes, and that's usually where we're thinking of it at. And evolution happens at that level, not at any of these other levels. Okay, so this is what matters here. Okay, evolution can alter these ecological interactions then. Okay, if we know that ecosystem and phenotype are related, and we know that evolution affects phenotype, then evolution can affect ecosystem. Okay, so here's an example of this. If a predator evolves a new way to capture prey. Okay, better teeth, faster running, okay, even just being better at noticing their camouflage. It doesn't matter. Okay, you're just getting a better capture technique. Okay. That prey species is going to decline. They might go extinct. More likely, they're just going to be less. Okay. Maybe they'll flee. Okay. Or, okay, as you'll talk about with your red queen, okay, they're going to have to evolve a way to cope with that. Okay. That back and forth is going to affect that ecosystem. Okay. That predator dampens that prey. Okay, what happens to what that prey was eating? So now we just have a huge lush in kale. Right? I'm really into kale lately. Okay. Now that means the area is more shaded. More nutrients are being taken from the soil. More water is being taken from the soil due to the kale, the ferocious kale, who's ruining everything. Okay. Maybe the kale will then start to outcompete daisies. I don't know, man. This has obviously gone a little off control, but we get the idea. All just because, right, the snowy owl, right, which was hunting the rabbit that ate the kale, got better at hunting rabbits. So now there aren't any rabbits to eat the kale. Okay, so we can start to see this setup of how one evolutionary change begins to snowball and affect the whole ecosystem. And there's lots of different versions of this, right? If we consider competition between two organisms, if one competitor also evolves and changes and becomes a better competitor, we can see similar shifts in the ecosystem. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop there.